very long time. Comment after comment after comment. But finally, we are tackling it. It's taken me some time to get around to this one. I knew most of the good cards, but this archetype has a lot of really just awful cards in addition to the really good ones. So we're going to, of course, go over all of them all today. And if you have any suggestions for future videos, list them in the comment section below. And of course, while you're there, like the video. Might as well. It doesn't hurt. But let's get started. Let's not waste too much time. Right off the bat, we've got Galaxy Dragon. This card is not very good at all. I'd probably put it in D tier. Basically, it is just a card full of restrictions unless you battle a dragon, in which case it has decent effects. So basically, it can't attack directly. If it battles a dragon, that monster has its effects negated during the battle phase, and this card gains 1,000 attack. Starts off with 2,000, it goes to 3,000. This card is basically made to take out a Galaxy Ice Photon Dragon. That is the entire point of this card. And it's not good. There are better cards to play. There are better level 4s to play. The only thing that's keeping it from being an F tier is the fact that it doesn't have it doesn't have any weird summoning restrictions. You can actually just normal summon this monster if you wanted to. But again, you really wouldn't really want to. Photon Charge, man, is in the same boat. He's another D tier. He's another card that's just like, he doesn't have any really bad restrictions like in terms of summoning, which is a good thing because you could just normal summon him. But his other effect is just garbage. It basically, his effect is you can make it gain 1,000 attack, and then it gains that attack until your next standby phase, and you can't attack when you activate this effect. So it goes from 1,000 to 2,000. You can't attack that turn, and it goes back during your standby phase. So now you have to use it again, and you still can't attack. It's just absolutely terrible. It's like if somebody gives you a brand new free haircut. It's like the perfect haircut. Even if you didn't have hair, they gave you hair. Your hair looks absolutely fantastic, but you can't leave the house. It doesn't make sense. It's like it gives you 1,000 attack, but you can't even use that 1,000 attack. Again, the only thing keeping it from D tier is the fact that it doesn't have any summoning restrictions. There are cards that, believe it or not, are even worse than this card. Next is Photon Advancer. This card is fairly versatile. I'd say B tier, edging on A tier. Yeah, I like Photon Advancer quite a bit. Basically, what he does is if you control a Photon monster, you can just special summon him for free. But he also doesn't have any normal summon restrictions. So you can normal summon him if you have him in your hand, and you can also special summon him if you have him in your hand. Like, either way, he's just really, really good. He's versatile for either situation. He gains 1,000 attack if you control another Photon monster, which doesn't really matter. You're not going to leave him on the field. You're going to either XYZ into a rank 4, or you're going to go into a link monster of some kind. You're not going to leave him on the field, that's for sure. Alright, next we've got Photon Wyvern. This card is, I'd say, top of D tier-ish. So this is the only level 7 in the entire archetype, despite the fact that they actually do have level 7 XYZ monsters, which is it's as weird as it sounds. So it's the only level 7. Its effect is when it's normal or normal or flip summoned, not special summon, normal or flip summoned. You can destroy all set cards your opponent controls. That could be good for like applying pressure, but the leveling of this card is just so bad. The majority of your good monsters are rank 8s. That's what you typically end on. Rank 8s. Sometimes you go into the link monsters. This is not a good enough normal summon that you would want to waste your normal summon on this card. Also, you don't want to give up 2 monsters to normal summon this to destroy set spawn trap cards. It's too much. It's just not good enough. That's all I've got to say. It's too weak for the amount of cost that you have to give up. Next, we've got Photon Pirate. This is another like weird card. As you can see here, it's only a level 3, so it's already, just by default, being a level 3 is terrible because the deck is full of rank 4s and rank 8s. So when you've got a random level 3 monster, it just doesn't synergize with the rest of the deck in any capacity. On top of that, it has this weird effect where you can banish Photon monsters from your graveyard, and it gains 1,000 every single time. You can use that twice. It starts off with 1,000. If you banish 2, which is not particularly easy to do, you get to 3,000 attack, which again, if you just taken the normal route of playing the deck, you would have gotten to monsters that are 3,000, 4,000, and far beyond that. So there's really absolutely no point to play this card. I just don't see it. It might even be our, yeah, you know what, it's our first F tier. It's not a good card. Like, the leveling is bad. yeah, the leveling is absolutely atrocious, and then the effect is just pointless. So it doesn't work with the rest of the deck. It has no synergy. Next is Photon Vanisher. This card is it's between A and S tier. I'd say probably safely I can put it in A tier. It's a really good card. Basically, what it does is if you control a Galaxy or Photon monster, you can special summon this card, and then on summon it has an additional effect where you can search a Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon from your deck to your hand. Very, very good effect. Just because inherently it's a +1. It doesn't use your normal summon. It's a free special summon. And then it also has an effect where if it's used as a XYZ material, meaning the Photon Vanisher, a monster that battles it is banished instead, which that actually does not come up that often, but it doesn't really, it's not like a big deal that effect doesn't come up. I'd rather have it on the card than not have it on the card. So occasionally it does come up, but most of the time it doesn't. But the effect, the +1 is really important, and getting a Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon in hand can help in so many different ways. It can help with summoning a Galaxy Soldier. It can help with all types of discard cost. It's really, really good. You want to get Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon out of your deck and into your hand and into the graveyard as fast as possible, because it synergizes with the rest of the deck really, really, like, a lot. So that card is definitely very important. Next is Photon Crusher. I'd say he's like C tier, just because he doesn't have, he's like bottom of C tier, like somewhere around D, like he's somewhere around there. Basically, he doesn't have any like outrageous restrictions. So basically, he just, if he attacks, you change him to defense position after you attack. It's not like terrible. It just, there are much, much better cards to play than this card. I have no, there's no reason to play this when you've got Photon Advancer. This card is just power crept in every single way with this, because this can be special summon or normal summon, and it'll gain an extra 1,000, making it 2,000 anyway. There's really no point to play this, but it's technically better than all of these, because these have a bunch of restrictions and bad levels and just a bunch of issues. So definitely I'd say C tier is about fair for that. Next is Photon Lizard. I'd say this is like either top of C or bottom of B. Like I'd say top of C. It's very much a tech card. You don't see people actually playing it that often. It's not like a terrible card. It's just not that great of a card. Basically what it does is if you tribute it, you can search a level 4 or lower Photon monster. The huge issue with this card is that, again, it's a level 3 instead of a level 4. It does have a half decent effect, but again, having the being a level 3 is kind of an issue, because your main routes are a Link monster or a rank 4 or a rank 8. Those are the 3 routes that you typically take in the deck, and if you have a monster that can't do at least 2 of those, it becomes a little bit of an issue. So for that reason, it is C tier. Next is Galaxy Soldier, definite S tier. This card is just so good. It's good in so many different, it's good in light decks, and on top of being really, really good in light decks, it's good in Cyber Dragons in its own way, but it's actually really, really good in the Galaxy Eyes deck, where it actually was supposed to be played. So basically what this card does is you discard a light monster, any light monster, so it can even be a hand trap like Ghost Ogre if you're playing Ghost Ogres, for example. That way they're not dead cards or effect failures. But you can discard a light monster to special summon this, and that has a second effect where if it's normal or special summon, you can search any Galaxy Eyes card, Galaxy Eyes monster in the game. Again, very good effect, just because typically in a like a Cyber Dragon deck, for example, you would search another Galaxy Soldier, but in this particular case, you would search whatever you want, basically. So many different cards that you can search. You can search Afterglow, which is one of the new cards, which is always a decent card to search. You can search the Photon Dragon if you need to. You can search Galaxy Cleric. There's Galaxy Wizard. There's such a large amount of things that you can search, but most importantly, you can actually search another copy of Galaxy Soldier, and then if you have another light monster, you can summon it again by discarding a light monster, and then go into the Cyber Dragon Nova and Cyber Dragon Infinity, giving you access to a negate of a monster spell or trap, and the ability to take a monster from your opponent if you're going second. Like this card is so good. It opens you up to so many different plays. It enables virtually everything. It enables rank 5 / infinity plays. It enables it gives you the ability to take a monster. It gives you the ability to negate. It gives you the ability, if you wanted to go into the link monster. It can help you search out the the level 8s that you can use to go into the rank 8s. Like, this card is so good in so many different ways. It just has so much synergy in the deck, and on top of that, not only does it have synergy in the deck, it actually excels the deck. It makes it better because it gives you access to more cards that you wouldn't typically have access to. That's really what separates Galaxy Solar. One of the best cards by far in the entire deck. Next is Photon Cerberus. This is another, like, I'd say D tier. This is the only level 6 in the entire deck. I have no idea why. There's just certain levels that have very, very few monsters. This is one of them. There's one level 7, there's one level 6, and there's like 2 level 5s. And I have no idea why they did it. A ton of level 8s, ton of level 4s, and then kind of a moderate sprinkling of everything else. But there's one level 6. Basically, what this card does is when it's normal summon, you can make your opponent shuffle away their hand and then draw a new hand. If you could figure out a way to use that, you can sort of maybe use it with like Droll and Lockbird, kind of like where if they search once, you droll them and then you summon this card, they shuffle away their hand and then they can't draw a new one. But that is such a gimmicky like play to do. There wouldn't be a reason to do that. On top of that, this card doesn't special summon itself. It's a level 6, so you're gonna have to tribute a monster. Now, granted, this deck doesn't actually have that many normal summons, so you could have the resources to tribute one monster, but you just really wouldn't want to. Yeah, definitely not a good card. Galaxy Tyranno, D tier also. Not a good card at all. Basically, when a Galaxy monster gets attacked, you can special summon this and immediately XYZ summon. Basically, you're going to be able to summon a rank 8 during your opponent's turn. You could just play, honestly, you could just play a better card, summon it during your turn, and then just XYZ summon during your turn. And then you can have either a monster negate in the form of Photon Lord, you could have a spell negate in the form of Hope Harbinger. You could just have access to so many other plays instead of like having to special summon during a select period of time during your opponent's turn. There's just no point. It's just not that good of a card. Next is Photon Caesar. I'd say probably C. C tier. Basically, what he does is he's also a level 8. When he's normal summoned, you can special summon another Photon Caesar from either your deck or from your hand. Inherently, this is actually not that bad of an effect, because basically, if you manage to normal summon him, you can get another level 8 and go to a rank 8. So, in theory, it's not a bad effect, but the issue with this effect is that it's a normal summon, so you have to give up 2 monsters. It's not like the biggest problem, because you can give up, where's that card? Photon Sanctuary. You could use Photon Sanctuary to summon tokens, and then just summon the Photon Caesar, tributing the 2 tokens. It's not the biggest problem, but again, they're just far better plays. The C is basically like options that you have, but typically you can actually just play better cards, stuff that's going to be in B, A, and S tier. But C is like optional. D is just, D and F you really don't want to touch. You don't want to touch D and F. They're just an absolute disaster. Next is Photon Cerberus. This card is actually interesting. I'm going to put this in C tier. Basically, the turn that this card is normal summon, neither player can activate trap cards. That is actually kind of interesting, because if you're going second and you're playing against, like, I don't know, like Altergeist or something, or just like a prominent trap card deck, that card can actually like seriously hinder your opponent from playing, because you could just normal summon this. Now your opponent's kind of like screwed. They can't activate their traps. It's almost like a Sekka's Light. So yeah, it has its uses, but again, it's just the typing is just terrible. Well, no, the leveling is terrible. It's a level 3 Photon monster. Tons of issues. Galaxy Cleric. Basically, this card is like your grind game card. Basically, if this card is normal or special summon, you can target 5 Galaxy and Photon cards and then shuffle them into the deck and draw 2 cards. It's like a built-in Pot of Avarice into the deck, and you put tons of monsters in the graveyard. Like, tons. The only one that you do not want to shuffle back into your deck is Galaxy Ice Photon Dragon, just because that card is good to have in graveyard, just generally speaking. But other than that card, this is actually, yeah, it's perfectly fine to shuffle everything back because your graveyard isn't that deep of a resource, and the draw 2 is really good. The only issue is that I wish it was like shuffle 3 and draw 1 instead of shuffle 5 and draw 2, because sometimes it's hard to get all the way up to that amount of monsters in your graveyard before you commit your normal summon. That's kind of the only real issue with the card. Also, you can attach it from your hand to an XYZ monster as material during your turn, which is a pretty cool effect. Like if you've run out of materials, you can just attach it. It's not the worst effect. It's not the best effect. But I get it's like somewhere down the middle. It's an okay effect. But the second effect is really good. Next is Photon Satellite. For me, this card's an F tier. You can target another Photon monster, and then you can make the level of that monster the combined levels of both of the monsters, which it really just sets up for really awkward situations. Like there's no point to ever play this. It has terrible stats, terrible typing. It's a level 1 monster. Like it just has no synergy whatsoever with the deck. I've never really liked it. The only use for it is if you play one of the level 3s, you can summon this and then summon the level 3, and then you can make them both level 4. Or you could just be a good player and play the good level 4s, and you don't have to worry about any of that nonsense. So yeah, I really don't like Photon Satellite. Next is Galaxy Brave. This card is another B tier. He's pretty good. You reveal a Photon monster and then special summon this card, and then basically this card becomes the level of that Photon monster. Not the worst effect, not the best effect. It's definitely like a good effect. I'd say this is behind Advancer. It's like a pretty good effect. This card, I've seen people play as many as 3 of this card, and I've seen people play as many as, or as little as 0 of this card. Like some people love it, some people hate it. If you're playing a lot more of the level 8s, you're playing stuff like Trading, you're playing stuff that searches the dragons, like Melody of Awakening dragons, then you should probably be playing this card. But if you're focusing more so on the level 4s, I would say stay away from it. But it's definitely one of the better cards in the deck. Galaxy Knight. This card is S or A. I'm going to leave the S to be a little more sacred. Yeah, this is the best normal summon in the deck, though. You know what? I'll put it in S, just because... Nah, I'm probably kind of freaking out with that. Alright, I'll leave it at A. Basically, this is the best normal summon in the deck. When it's normal summoned, you can special summon a Galaxy Ice Photon Dragon from your graveyard, which is very good effect, because basically you just create a rank 8 right away. Also, if you control a Galaxy or Photon monster, you can normal summon this card without tributing, which is really, really good, because it's a level 8. So you get to summon it, special summon a monster from the graveyard, and you basically have access to the Link monster or the ability to XYZ summon. Either way, really, really good. The only restriction that it has is that when it's summoned, it loses 1,000 attack. None of that matters, because again, you're going to be either Link summoning or XYZ summoning with it, so it's irrelevant, but it's the best normal summon that you have. Next is Photon Karibo. This one is probably somewhere in the D's. Probably like right here. Basically what it does is if you can discard it, pay 2,000 life points, and then you take no damage for the rest of the turn. That could be good. The issue is you have to pay life points in order to avoid damage, which is just so dumb, but you can activate it essentially at any time that you want, and it avoids damage, so it avoids effect damage, which is kind of cool. Effect damage or battle damage. So you take no damage, but you have to pay 2,000 life points, which, again, it's a pretty crazy drawback. Also has an effect where you can send a Photon monster from your hand to the graveyard, and then add this from your graveyard to your hand, which is pretty good, because you can basically loop this card and survive for 3 turns. So I'll put that in C tier. It has its uses, but I would generally try to stay away from this card. Alright, next is Galaxy Worm. This is another kind of C tier. Basically what it does is when it's normal summoned and you control no other monsters, you can special summon a level 3 or lower Galaxy monster from your deck. So you can summon another Galaxy Worm, you can summon Cloud Dragon, and there's one more, and the Mirror Sage. Those are really the only ones you have access to. So it's basically 3 monsters that you can special summon. Honestly, this card is actually better in just decks that need to spit out rank 3s, stuff like Burning Abyss, than it is in this deck. Also, again, it's just better in decks that where you need to start your combo off with like a Link 2. Those are the best decks that play this card. It's actually not that great in the Galaxy Eyes deck. It's better in other decks than it is in this deck. Next is Galaxy Eyes Afterglow. This card's really, really good. It's actually one of the newer cards, and it's one that if you don't have, you have to pick up immediately. Basically, what this card does is if you control a Galaxy Eyes monster, you could special summon this for free. Then it has a second effect where if this card is detached as material, you can special summon a Galaxy Eyes monster from your deck, from your hand, or from your deck, which is a really good effect. And then on top of that, and there's no restrictions on that monster. Like, that monster can attack, its effects aren't negated, everything's fine. You could summon a Galaxy Eyes monster, a Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon from your deck. On top of that, if you use this effect during the battle phase, you double the attack of all XYZ monsters on the field. So that effect is absolutely disgusting. It basically lets you OTK at any given time. Especially, it's just really, really good with a lot of these really, really big Galaxy Eyes monsters. There's one in particular here. I can't see it right now because I'm being dumb, but there's one that's right here. Really, really good with that monster just because it gives it a monstrous amount of attack. But definitely very, very, very good card. Really helps the synergy of the deck and very, very good for OTKing. Next is Galaxy Eyes Cloud Dragon. This card is, I'd say, top of C tier. It's a good, like, recovery card, sort of. Basically, what it does is you can tribute this card, special summon a Galaxy Eyes, a monster from your graveyard or from your hand. Remember, this is a Galaxy Eyes monster, so it doesn't apply to all Galaxy monsters, so it's not like Galaxy Soldier. It's for stuff like Afterglow and stuff like Photon Dragon in your hand. XYZ monsters if they're properly summoned out of the graveyard, but they won't have any materials. Its second effect is that it can attach itself as material to a Galaxy Eyes monster that you control, which again is a fairly decent effect, because if you use the first effect to revive an XYZ monster, you can basically instantly give it an XYZ material, which is pretty cool. The only issue with this card is, again, its leveling is just outside of the deck. It's a level 1. And the other issue with this card is more of like a grind game recovery card, like a one-time, like a turn 2, turn 3 sort of use card. It's not something that you really want to use in turn 1, and that's kind of the issue with this card. But other than that, I'd say it's half decent. Next is Photon Circle. This is another D tier. Basically, any battle damage this card takes is halved. It's a level 4 Photon monster that is 1,000 attack. Advancer is just better in every way because it summons itself. This does not. Vanisher is better in every way than this. It's just bad. There's just literally are just better versions of this card available in the archetype. Absolutely no reason to play. Next is Photon Thrasher. This card is, again, you can use either of these. They're both pretty good. It depends on how you build the deck. If you want to focus more on like the mid-range strategy with the rank 4s, or you want to focus on more of the rank 8 strategy with the Afterglow and all of Galaxy, Brave, and stuff like that. It really depends on which route you want to take with the deck, but this is definitely not a bad card. Basically, if you control no monsters, you can special summon it. That's all it really does. That's important, but it basically gives you a free monster without wasting your normal summon. And it helps you go into the Link monster, and it helps you go into rank 4s. So it helps with a lot of different things, and it doesn't really hinder you much. So pretty good card there. Galaxy Wizard. Again, this is another good level 4. Basically, what this card does, I'd probably say this is somewhere around here. It's a good card. Basically, what it does is has two effects. Effect number 1 is that you can make this gain four levels at any given time, making it a level 8, helping you go into rank 8 plays. That's already pretty good because you can just give yourself a level 8 monster whenever you need it. Secondly, you contribute this card to search a Galaxy card from your deck. So tons of different cards it's a huge range of cards that you can search. The only issue, again, it's not like a search on summon, it's a search by tribute, so you actually get rid of the monster that you have on field. Also, what I like about the becoming a level 8 monster is that you can actually bait out things like impermanence sometimes. So you can summon it, activate that effect, and then your opponent's like, oh, impermanence, just because they get scared that you're going to do something, and then you just go into your regular play. So I like random effects like that that just can bait other effects out. Next is Photon... I forget this guy's name. It's either Saber or Tiger. But this is another level 3. It's another same old story. Level 3, basically when it's summoned, you can search another one of him. Same old story, it's just not that good. Photon, I think this is Photon Slasher. This is a level 5. I'd say he's somewhere in C tier 2. Basically, actually, we'll move this here. Basically what he does is if there's an XYZ monster on the field, you can special summon him. The only issue with him is that's not even uncommon in the deck. On the contrary, it's actually rather common. The issue with this card is that it's a level 5. If this was a level 4, again, we'd be in the money, but this is a level 5. It actually has more uses in other decks than it does in this deck. So for that reason, it is where it is. Galaxy Ice Photon Dragon, this is definitely S tier. The deck literally revolves around it, and the more support that they release, the more it revolves around this card. So when this card came out, it had a decent effect. Basically, during the battle phase, it can banish itself and an opponent's monster before damage calculation, which is a pretty cool effect. It's not like the greatest effect ever, but it's very good for dealing with XYZ monsters, because when they return, you get additional attack for you get additional attack when your monster returns, which is actually pretty good. But again, it's not like the best effect in the world, but it's definitely like a usable effect. It's basically got the stats of a Blue Eyes White Dragon, but it actually has an effect. So in a lot of ways, it's, yeah, like I said, the deck is built around it. So you're going to search it off of Vanisher, you're going to summon it off of Afterglow, you're going to summon it off of Galaxy Knight. You're going to summon it off the XYZ monster, this one right here. For some reason, I just forgot it for a split second, but off of this Photon Siege, this monster right here, you can summon it off of that. It has a lot of uses. Like, you're going to be summoning it constantly throughout the duel, during your turn, during your opponent's turn. So it has so much synergy with all of the other cards that it's very much obviously an S tier. On its own, it's actually not that great of a card, but within the context of everything, it's actually a very, very good card. Next is Photon Orbital. This is another card. It's actually might be the best card in the archetype. Basically, you can attach it to, from your hand, you can attach it, or from the field, to a Galaxy or Photon monster that you control, and then you can send it to the graveyard to search a Galaxy or Photon monster. Also, while it's attached, it gains 500 attack, and it can't be destroyed by card effects. No, I'm sorry, it can't be destroyed by battle. And while it is attached to that monster, it basically, it's protected from battle. But the reason that that's good is because other cards that you have, like the new monster Cipher X, wherever there it is. Cipher X protects from card effects and targeting. So it makes your monster very impervious. But that effect isn't even the good effect. The good effect, of course, is the searching effect, because you can search things like Galaxy Soldier. It used to actually be a better card when you had Union Carrier, but unfortunately Union Carrier got banned, and for that reason it's slightly worse, but it's still a very, very, very strong card. So Photon Orbital, definitely a very good card. Next is Galaxy Mirror Sage. This is definitely Neft tier. It's a flip effect in a deck revolved around XYZ summoning. It's just conceptually such a bad card. It's also a level 3. It's just so bad in so many. It's a flip effect that gains life points in a deck built around XYZ summoning, and you can only XYZ summon with face-up monster. It's just so bad. It is so slow and so bad. There isn't even an alternate universe where I would ever consider using this card. It's terrible. Galaxy Serpent. This card is actually a good card. Let's make things very clear. This is a good card. But in the deck, it's not a good card. So it's a level 2 monster, and it's a tuner, and it's a dragon. Outside of this deck, it has seen tons of competitive play, but not in this deck. In this deck, it's never been very good, because you have no synchro monsters whatsoever. Maybe if they release a synchro monster, we can have that conversation. Right now, this card is unusable in the deck, but generally speaking, it's actually a decent card outside of this. Next is Galaxy Ice Solar Flare Dragon. This card is definitely an A tier. Basically what it does is, its summoning requirements are 2 light monsters. At least one has to have 2000 attack. You have all basically of the monsters in the S and B tier meet that requirement, which is why I put them where they are. But basically they meet that requirement, and what it does is when it's summoned, you can... when it's link summoned, you can add a Photon or Galaxy Eyes card from your graveyard back to your hand, so it recurs resources, which is really nice. On top of that, it has an effect where during your opponent's turn, you can discard a Photon and a Galaxy Eyes card to destroy a special summon monster your opponent controls. But if you have a Photon Galaxy Ice Photon Dragon, like the boss, the main monster of the deck, you can just discard that and then destroy that monster that your opponent controls. Yet another reason why the deck revolves around him, as I've been saying. But definitely, he is extraordinarily important. But yeah, it's a very, very good recursion card, generally speaking. You have to play it. Like, I haven't seen a deck without it. Next is Photon... I've Twin something. But basically, this is the fusion monster. This card is pointless. Like, this card, you would only use it to actually play against the deck. You wouldn't even play it in the deck. You'd play it to use against the deck. So if for some reason Photon/Galaxy Eyes ever became like a tier 1 deck, everybody would be playing this in their extra deck. And yeah, basically everyone would be using this in their extra deck and super polying your monsters away. You wouldn't actually ever want to fuse into this thing ever in your life. Its effects are just terrible. Basically what it does is it's 2 Photon monsters, and its effects is that you contribute this monster and then special summon those monsters back to the field. So you summon it, and then its effects are just to bring back the other monsters. So like what is the point of that? I don't know. The only combo I've ever come up with this card on is you can use Ultra Polymerization to summon this thing, and then you can use Ultra Polymerization to bring those 2 materials back, and then you can like link with those 2 materials and then activate this card's effect and then special summon those 2 materials back again, and then you can like XYZ summon with those materials, which I guess is good. But you can just, the deck already does that, so you don't have to jump through all these hurdles and go through all these hoops to do all of this weird stuff. Also, it only fuses Photon monsters, not Galaxy Eyes monsters. So sometimes you'll just get an awkward hand where you can't fuse them, and now you have a dead polymerization, or yeah, you have like a dead polymerization or a dead super polymerization, or ultra polymerization, I should say. So it's just totally unusable. It's more usable against you than it is for you, and that's kind of the issue with the card. Next, now we're into the XYZ monsters. Basically, this is Galaxy Eyes Full Armor Photon Dragon. I'd say he's B tier. He's really good, but like, you know, every one of them is utility, so it has its purposes. It's gotten a lot better with Cipher Dragon. Cipher Dragon is really good because it lets you like basically get rid of 3 cards your opponent controls. But this card, basically what it does, it has 2 effects, one of which never comes up. You can target 2 equip cards attached to this card and make it material to this card. That effect is pointless. Basically, it requires 3 level 8s to summon, but you could just summon it over a Galaxy Eyes monster, XYZ monster you control, so it kind of gets around its own summoning condition. But what's positive about it, it's 4,000 attack, and it has no restrictions in regards to attacking, so you can attack with that 4,000 attack monster. But also it has an effect where you can detach a material to pop a card your opponent controls, face-up card your opponent controls. And like I said, you can, with certain cards, you can actually pop tons of cards. And actually, I'll go over those cards now, just to get those out of the way. Cipher Dragon is typically how you start that combo. Cipher Dragon is definitely an A tier. Basically, it has an effect where you can steal an opponent's monster, and then that monster's original name becomes Galaxy Eye Cipher Dragon, and that can help rank up into other stuff, which is pretty good for the card. Also, the only monster that can attack is this card for the rest of the turn. So that effect is, I'd say, fairly decent. It steals a monster, and it steals a monster and then kind of restricts it, but it's got its positive effects. Next, we're going to go over the next card here is Cypher Blade. Cypher Blade is a level 9, but you can just summon it, or rank a 9. But you can just summon it over a Galaxy Eye Cipher Dragon Basically, it has an effect. It's 3200 attack. You can detach a material in order to pop a card. Again, fairly good effect. Yeah, just generally a pretty good effect. You can detach the pop, and it could be face down or face up, whereas full armor requires a face up. It just has slightly less attack than the full armor. And then we've got the new monster, which is Cipher Blade Dragon, and this card is really good. I'd say this is, again, one of the I'd say it's probably somewhere around A tier. Basically, what this lets you do is you can detach materials, and then you can protect all light monsters you control. That's really good. You can summon it over a Cipher Dragon, or I should say Galaxy Ice Cipher Dragon, that you control, which is easy to do because you can actually use the Galaxy Ice Cipher Dragon, take your opponent's monster. That monster's name is now Galaxy Ice Cipher Dragon. You can actually summon this XYZ monster over that monster that you took from your opponent. It's a crazy effect. Awesome. And then it has another kind of grind game recovery effect where you can special summon. During the standby phase, you can target a monster, a XYZ number monster in your graveyard, return it back to your extra deck, and then you can use this and the monster underneath it as material to summon that monster from your extra deck. So it basically like cheats out like a crazy XYZ summon of a monster that your opponent has already outed. Also, it gives your deck like a ton of protection. Really good card. But Cipher Dragon is really the card that starts all of this. It lets you pop like an insane amount of cards because basically, like, you get 2 level 8s on board, you summon the Cipher Dragon, you target a monster your opponent controls, take it, so you've already taken 1 card from your opponent, you summon Cypher Blade, Cypher X over that monster, so now they're not getting it back, then you enter battle phase, you attack, take out another monster, you go to main phase 2, you summon full armor, you pop another card, and then you summon Cypher Blade, and then you pop another card, so you literally took out 4 cards with 1 card. It's absolutely insane, and that's if you want to kind of grind it out a little bit. If you didn't want to grind it out, you could just go into the Afterglow and into one of the bigger rank 8s, and you could just end the game right there. But if you wanted to, you could just like Dark Ruler and then break a board. It's insane. Cypher Blade enables just so much craziness when going second. It's such a good going second card. It gives you so many options. It's definitely one of the better cards in the deck. Next is Galaxy Ice Tomahawk. I'm putting this at low end B tier because, actually, no, I'm not even going to bother with that. So basically, it's somewhere in C tier. This card is actually, if it was not in this deck, right? I'm reviewing all of the cards in their context in this deck. If I was just reviewing this card, it would be an S tier because it's a really good card. Summons tokens, and we know tokens can create tons of problems because they're just basically endless link summons. But the issue with this card is it's a level 7. And again, as I've said before, this deck has 1 level 7. And I think it's this right here. Yeah, it's the Photon... Is it Serpent or something? It has 1 level 7. This deck does not have access to this card. This card is better in decks like Red Eyes, decks like Harpies. It's not as good in this deck as it is in other decks. And that's part of the issue with this card. But as a card itself, it's actually like fairly nice. Next is Galaxy Eyes Photon Lord. This, I can safely put into S tier. It's actually a really good card. Basically, what this card does is if your opponent activates your opponent activates a monster effect, you basically can negate it. It negates the effect, which is really good because it's kind of like Ash Blossom in that way, so your opponent can't sort of activate it again. It negates and destroys. It negates the effect and then destroys, which is really good. That's effective number 1. Its second effect is that during your opponent's turn, you can take a Photon or Galaxy monster from your deck, and you can either attach it to this card as material or add it to your hand. It's both really good access to just kind of recurring resources during your opponent's turn. And again, that's a quick effect. Like, you could just activate that at any point during your opponent's turn, just randomly search. And both effects are once per turn, but they're not only once that turn. So you can activate 2 effects in that 1 turn. Very good card. Gives you a monster negate and lets you search. Yeah, really good effect. Next is Photon Bouncer. This, again, I'm going to put it next to no, it's worse than Tomahawk. It's probably like in D tier. Not a bad card. In theory, not a bad card. It's a rank 6. As I've said before, this 1 level 6 monster, it's Cerberus. There is one level 6 monster. You don't have access to this in this deck, and that's the problem with this card. You have no way to summon it. But its effects are actually pretty good. If your opponent activates a monster effect, you can negate and destroy that monster and then inflict 1,000. Like, in theory, that's good. Also, just outside of the Galaxy Eyes deck, there aren't a lot of good level 6 monsters, and there aren't a lot of good level 6 decks. Shout out to Summon Skull, but outside of Summon Skull, I mean, like, what do you have? Hazy Flames? And there's just nothing, there's nothing out there. You have, like, Archfiends and Hazy Flames. It's like two archetypes that are dinosaurs. I mean, they have nothing left. They're drained of resources. You have Jinzo, but Jinzo is like, it's a deck reliant on your opponent playing trap cards. It's a disaster in itself. So unfortunately, despite the fact that this card is actually not that bad, not only is it not good in this deck, it's actually not, it doesn't have the proper monsters to use it. The only other like level 6 decks is like Herald of Perfection, but Herald of Perfection literally already does what this card does, plus it negates spell and trap cards. So you really wouldn't even, why would you give up 2 Heralds to summon this when you could just leave the 2 Heralds? Yeah, this card's a little bit of a disaster all around. Like, it's a good card, it just doesn't have the right materials. All right, next is the coolest name of all time, Super Dimensional Robot Galaxy Destroyer. I'm going to put this right next to Photon Bouncer. Basically, it requires 3 level 10 monsters. And then you can, it has an effect where you can detach a material, destroy all spawn trap cards your opponent controls, and they can't respond to that effect. That effect is not bad at all. The issue with this card is that it requires 3 level 10s. Like, even if you could summon 3 level 10s, which is not easy, why I wouldn't imagine giving all 3 of those level 10s up to summon 1 monster to get rid of back row. And if your opponent has a field of back row, they would have already gotten rid of they would have interrupted you summoning 3 level 10s. You don't, like, there's no token generator that'll summon 3 level 10s. There's no, like, easy way to summon 3 level 10s. So yeah, there's just, I don't know why you would want to go into that card. There are better rank 10s anyway, like Libe. So just kind of a card I don't think I would ever really need to summon. Next is Photon Alexandra Queen. This card is another, like, just has no synergy with the deck whatsoever. I'd say, again, I'll put it in D tier because it's not a bad card, but it just doesn't have any synergy with the deck. It requires 2 Butter Spy monsters. You detach a material and then return all monsters on the field back to the hand, and then inflict damage to the controller of the monsters that were returned to the hand 300 times the monsters. Like, it's not a bad, like, monster in itself. It's just, it has no synergy whatsoever in the deck, so you're not going to be using it. It's the big issue with the card. It has no synergy whatsoever with the deck. Next is the 107 Neo Galaxy Ice Tachyon. This card is like it has a very good effect. You just don't have a reliable way to summon this card. Basically, what this does is you can detach. It's 3 level 9s, but you can detach a detach a material from this card, and then negate the effect of all cards on the field, which is an insane effect. And then if you have a Galaxy Ice Tachyon Dragon as material, this card can attack like a ton of times. But again, this just does more of what the deck already does. Like, there's no point to, like, waste all these resources on summoning level 9s, or cheating your way into this card when you can just yeah, there's just no point to, like, do some fancy way to summon this card when you can just do what this card already does naturally anyway. There's just no point to go into this card. Next is the Galaxy Queen Xyz Monster. This card is, again, not very good. It's basically for level 1s. It has no synergy whatsoever with the deck. It is essentially just for level 1s. That's what this card is for. It's basically, it lets level 1 monsters not get destroyed by battle, and it lets level 1 monsters do piercing when they attack, which they're level 1 monsters. What are they doing? But yeah, this card is not very good. It requires a lot of monsters to summon, and the payoff's not that great. Next is Neo Galaxy Ice Photon Dragon. This card, I'd say, is top of C tier. Basically, what it does is, if it's summoned, it requires 3 level 8s. If it's summoned using a Galaxy Ice Photon Dragon, you can negate the effects of all face-up cards on the field, which, again, is not a bad card. It's kind of like a Dark Ruler no more, except your opponent can respond. But the positive part about this card is that it does negate those effects. It forces a response from your opponent. The negative is that it requires 3 level 8s. Also, it has an effect where you can make all XYZ monsters detach their material, and then this card gains attack for all materials. So this card is very good against other XYZ decks, but those aren't exactly floating around all that often, with the exception of like Zodiacs. The problem with Zodiacs is that they are playing Trident, which beats this card, and they're playing Zeus, which definitely beats this card. So this card isn't that bad. It just gets absolutely destroyed by cards that it is intended to be good against. Next is Galaxy Ice Dark Matter Dragon. This card is banned for a reason, but actually it wasn't even really that great in the deck. It was actually better in other decks than it was in this deck. I'd say this card is somewhere around B tier in the Galaxy Eyes deck. This definitely did not get banned because of Galaxy Eyes. This got banned because of like a combination of Thunder Dragon, like there's like a Thunder Dragon, like Guard Dragon deck. That's why this card got banned. It did not get banned because of, like, this card was actually not that great in this deck. It was just okay. Like, you still played it because it attacks twice, and you can put Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragons into the graveyard. But, like, other than that, this card is just, like, okay in this deck. Plus, it's, like, 4,000, and it can, like, attack multiple times. So, it definitely has some, like, positive synergies. But for the most part, this card is actually, yeah, it was just better in other decks. Also, this card is very, very good with Afterglow. Disgusting with Afterglow. But it never, like, the two of these cards never, ever had any synergy. Because technically, Afterglow would double this card's attack. This card would attack multiple times on monsters. That would be really good. But again, they never actually played in the same metagame. This card was banned way before Afterglow ever existed. Hope Harbinger is definitely S tier. This is one of my favorites. Has all of its effects are just, like, really, really good. And some of them people even forget. Basically, what Hope Harbinger does is, right off the bat, if your opponent activates a spell, you can negate if they activate a spell, effect or activate, like, from their hand. You can take that and attach it to material as this card. If a monster you control is destroyed, you can make this card gain attack equal to the monster that got destroyed, which is, again, pretty good. If they try to spot removal something else, you gain attack. And then on top of it, when your opponent attacks, you can redirect their attack to this card. So all three effects come up. The middle effect that I said, the one where this card gains attack, doesn't come up that often, because usually if they have a card that destroys one monster, they'll typically destroy your whole field. But still, it has its own levels of use. It's definitely it's pretty damn good card. Basically, every level 8 deck should play a Hope Harbinger Dragon and a Photon Lord, but in the Galaxy Eyes deck, they have additional uses. This is Galaxy Stealth Dragon. Again, this goes in the D tier area where it's good, like, it's not that bad, but it's just not that good in this deck. Basically, it requires 2 level 4 dragon monsters, which the deck just doesn't really use, because the best monsters are all of these warrior monsters that special summon themselves. Those are the best rank 4s in the deck. And then it lets you summon a dragon from your hand, which, again, it doesn't really, you don't really have the synergy for it, and it gives you protection from basically other Galaxy cards can't be targeted, which, again, is not bad, but there's just cards that do it better, and that's why this card isn't really usable. Next is Neo Galaxy Ice Cipher Dragon. This card is just, I put it somewhere around here. This card is basically just Neo Galaxy Eyes, but just way more difficult to summon, way more hoops to jump through. It basically has a similar effect where you can take your opponent's monster, and then you can make it 4,500 attack and make it this card's name, and then that's the only monster that can attack. Like, it's not bad. It's just you have to jump through so many hoops to summon it, and then it doesn't have the synergy of going into that thing that I described earlier where you can pop like 4 cards. So it's not bad, but it's definitely not very good. Next is Starliege Photon Blast Dragon. This card's definitely A tier. It's pretty good. Basically, what this card does is it's 2 level 4s. Very generic, very easy to summon. But basically what it does is when it's summoned, you can summon a Photon monster from your hand. That's just free on summon. It has another effect where your opponent cannot target other monsters you control. Cannot target monsters you control with 2,000 or more attack, and they can be destroyed by card effect. And then on top of that, it has an effect where during your opponent's turn, you can detach a material and then special summon a Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon from your graveyard or from your banished pile. All three of the effects are all pretty good. gives you protection, gives you a free summon, all pretty darn good. Definitely, yeah, pretty good. Tachyon is a card you're definitely playing in your extra deck. I'd say somewhere on there. It has synergy. It's basically one big battle phase card. It has synergy with the other Link monster, which is somewhere around here. Here it is. The stealth, because stealth makes a gain attack equal to its number. So it has synergies with other cards like that. Also, it has synergy with the counter trap. Because you can activate the counter trap from your hand if you control the Galaxy Ice Tachyon Dragon. Its core effects are actually not that great, but everything around it is actually pretty good. So they try to force you to use this card, Cipher, and they try to force you to use Galaxy Ice Photon Dragon. These are like the main big cards of the deck that the game of Yu-Gi-Oh just seems to, like, the Konami research and development group, just they really want you to play these three cards. So you basically you just do it because you get a bunch of extra effects. Galaxy Photon Satellite. This is, I'd say, a half decent card. Basically, what it lets you do is you can banish this during the battle phase from your graveyard or face up on the field, and then a XYZ monster with a number gains attack times 100 equal to its number. So a Tachyon Dragon, which is a number, what is it, like a number 100 or 107 or something like that. It basically gains attack times that. So it would gain, like 100 times 100. It gained a ton of attack. Yeah, it gains a bunch of attack, and then it also has another effect where during your opponent's end phase, you can pick any card and put it on the top of your deck, which basically lets you pick the card that you draw the following turn. Two pretty decent effects. This is just another Photon Butterfly. I put it where the other one is. Basically what it does is lets you flip a monster, its defense, to attack again, and loses defense points. It's really not a very good card at all. Next is Galaxy Ice Prime Photon Dragon. This card is pretty good. I'd say it's somewhere around here, around B tier. Basically what it does is when you declare an attack, you could detach during damage calculation, and this card gains attack times 200 based on the amount of ranks on the field. But the reason that that effect is already pretty decent, because it's got 4,000 attack and then it gains more attack. Just using itself as material, because it's a rank 8, it's basically 8 times 200. It already gains 16, so it's 56. On top of that, if you detach a copy of Galaxy Ice Cipher Dragon, you can summon a Photon Dragon, and you can double that attack, so 56 times 2, which would give you, what is that, 11,200, just based on that. It's a crazy amount of attack. This card is very good for finishing duels. Basically, if you can get 2 level 8s on board, one of which is a Cipher Dragon, you can basically win the duel at any given time, because you can summon a gigantic monster and swing for game. Next is the Ritual Monster. I'll put the Ritual Monster and the Ritual Spell. I'll just put them in F2. They have absolutely no synergy whatsoever with the deck. There's no reason why you would ever want to do this. That's not what the deck is built around, and it makes it incredibly, incredibly difficult to use. Yeah, definitely, you just do not want to play that. Next is a lot of the Galaxy and Photon Spawn Trap cards. A ton of them are actually they're just general light support. They're not even like Galaxy or Photon related. Photon Lead, it lets you summon a monster, it lets you summon a level 4 lower light monster from your hand. Again, this is actually better in other decks than it is in this deck. As you can see there, it has Nova Summoner and Shining Angel on it. It's actually better for other special summon 1 level 4 lower light monster from your hand to face up attack position. It's actually better for other cards. There's no point to play that, because Photon Vanisher special Advancer summons itself, Thrasher summons itself. There's no point to play another card to help you summon a monster when your monsters already special summon themselves. So although it's not a bad card in concept, like it's probably good in other decks, it's actually not that great in this deck. Next is Galaxy Cyclone. Yeah, Galaxy Cyclone. Basically, what this card does, I'd say probably somewhere in the same area. It lets you target a set spawn trap card, destroy it, and then during the like a different turn, you can banish this from the graveyard and then destroy a face-up spawn trap card. So in theory, you get to destroy 2 spawn trap cards, but it's incredibly slow, and it doesn't let you target a face-up card with your initial activation. So if your opponent has a floodgate, for example, you have to wait a whole turn to destroy that floodgate. So it's a little bit of an issue, but it's I guess decent spawn trap card removal because technically speaking, it is a +1. Next is Photon Trident. Again, not just not that great. It's more of a utility card. Basically, it gives one of your monsters piercing, and when you inflict battle damage, it gives them piercing, 700 attack, and if you inflict battle damage, you can destroy a spawn trap card. I hate cards that destroy spawn trap cards after you have successfully attacked, because if they had a battle trap of any kind, they would have already activated it, so it's kind of pointless for that. Next is Galaxy Queen's Light. This is an F tier. It has no synergy in the deck whatsoever. It lets you target a level 7 or higher monster, and all monsters become that level. Most of your good monsters are already level 8. The entire deck has one level 7. It has one level 7 anyway. So this card has no synergy with the deck. All of your level 7 or higher monsters are already level 8 except for one of them. So there's absolutely no reason to play this card. No synergy whatsoever. Next is Galaxy Expedition. This card is actually pretty good. It's one of your better spawn trap cards. Say A tier. Basically what this card does is if you control a Galaxy or Photon monster, you can summon a Galaxy or Photon monster from your deck. It's a hard once per turn, but outside of that, it's a really, really good card. Helps you basically spit out monsters that you need. Next is Galaxy Trance. This card is actually pretty good too. I'd say somewhere in B tier. It's probably somewhere around here. Basically what it does is you can target a Photon monster in your graveyard, pay 2,000 life points, and then special summon that and a Galaxy Ice monster from your deck with the same level, and then their effects are negated, and you're locked into basically Photon and Galaxy Ice and Galaxy monsters for the rest of the deck, for the rest of the turn. That is not an issue at all because that's basically what you're playing in the deck anyway. It's a pretty pure deck, so the restriction is not that big. The only thing is that it does require a bit of setup because you have to get that Photon monster in the graveyard. Outside of that, it's a pretty decent card. Photon Sanctuary is one of the best cards in the deck, especially, I'd say this is probably top of A tier, especially with the Link Monsters release. It's very good because you could just activate this. So it locks you into lights, which again doesn't matter because literally the entire archetype is a light. It locks you into lights. You summon these 2 tokens, and then you can link those 2 tokens away and go into the Link Monster for free, or you contribute them to summon the Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon. You still don't waste your normal summon. So either way, it's a pretty good effect. This is definitely an F tier. It's a Photon something unit. It's a Cyber Dragon card, and it's a terrible Cyber Dragon card. It's not only bad in its own archetype, it's bad in this archetype. It's technically speaking the first Photon card, and it still absolutely sucks. It is something you definitely do not want to play. Next is Photon Hand. This card is, I'd say, somewhere around B tier. It's a decent card. It's more of a tech card. It's only good going second. It basically, if you control a Galaxy or Photon monster, you can target a monster your opponent controls and take it. It's like Snatch Steal, basically, but it is searchable. If you don't control a Galaxy-sized Photon Dragon, you can only take an XYZ monster, which kind of sucks, so only activate it, really, if you have that. But it's a decent card for those purposes. It's a Snatch Steal that requires a ton of setup, and that's kind of the issue with the card. But it's definitely not a bad card by any means. It just is more of a side deck card than it is a main deck card. Photon Booster is another card that just has no synergy in the deck whatsoever. It lets you target a monster with a light monster, and then all monsters become that name, and they all become 2,000 attack. It just has, I don't know why you would want to do that. It has no synergy with the deck whatsoever, and I don't see a purpose for that card. I don't know why you would want to use that. Next is Photon Stream of Destruction. This card's not terrible. It's just not that great. Basically, what it lets you do is if you control a Galaxy Eyes monster, you can banish a card on the field, but if you control a Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon, you can activate this effect during either player's turn, which is decent spot removal, but not the best. Next is Galaxy Wave. I'd say this is bottom of C tier. Basically what it does is every time you XYZ summon, you inflict 500 life points to your opponent. Again, this effect is not bad by any means. It's just you don't XYZ summon. So you inflict 500 every time you XYZ summon. You would have to XYZ summon, how many times is that? 8 times. You would have to XYZ summon 16 times in a turn in order to basically FTK your opponent, which you're not going to be able to do that. So you'd have to have like multiple copies of this card. If you had multiple copies of this card, now you have less cards in your hand to access to summon those XYZ monsters. It's not a card that needs to be played in the deck whatsoever. You just rather play the cards in B, A, or S tier rather than this card, even though technically on paper it's not a terrible card. Next is Galaxy Storm. This is easily another F tier. Basically what this card does is you can target an XYZ material with no material, no, XYZ monster with no material, and destroy it. And I don't know who in the world would leave a monster with no material on the field. I don't know who that person is, but if they exist, this is the card to use against them. It very rarely happens, so there's no point to even use it. Next is Photon Veil. This is another F tier. It's just really bad. Basically, it's a card, Photon Veil, you have to shuffle 3 light monsters into your deck, and then add either 1 to 3 light monsters from your deck to your hand. And if you add 2 or more monsters, they must all have the same name, which is just absolutely terrible. I don't know why you would want to do that. The cost is astronomical. 3 monsters. 3 light monsters is a lot of monsters. If you draw 2 light monsters, a dead card in your hand. A really, really, really bad card. I don't know why you would ever want to play Photon Veil. Next is Galaxy Zero. This is another kind of like B tier card. It's like a tech card. It lets you summon a galaxy. It's basically like Premature Burial, but for a galaxy or photon monster. Also, its effects are negated, stuff like that. Also, if the monster would be destroyed by card effect or by battle during the battle phase, you could destroy this card instead. So it's like a Premature Burial with protection. There's no real way to loop it like you can with Premature Burial, but it's definitely like a half decent card. If there was like some like bouncing in the deck, this card could be really good because you could just keep special summoning stuff from the graveyard. But unfortunately, there's not, so this card's just okay. Next is Photon Change. Trap cards I'm not a huge fan of, except for one of them. In this deck, it's somewhere in C tier. Basically, you can send a Photon or Galaxy Eyes or Galaxy Monster to the graveyard in order to activate one of the following 2 effects. One of which is you can special summon a Photon monster from your deck, and the other effect is you can search a Photon monster from a Photon card from your deck. You could do both effects if you send a Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon from your field to the graveyard, which is pretty cool. You get 2 effects. Also, it has this weird, like, stupid restriction, which is you have to send this card to the graveyard the second turn after it's been on the field. I don't know why in the world this card has to send itself to the graveyard. It's not that good. It's not that broken. I don't know why it has to just send that's just such a stupid and unnecessary restriction. But it's just an okay card, even if it didn't have that restriction. Next is Tachyon Chaos Hull. This card is top of C tier. Like, when it goes off, it's really, really good, but it's very tough for it to go off. Basically, when an XYZ monster, a Galaxy has XYZ monster is destroyed by battle or opponent's card effect, you can destroy all cards your opponent controls and then banish them. And then it also has an effect where you can basically recur it instead of conducting your normal draw phase, which is pretty cool. So when it goes off, this card's really good, but like your Galaxy XYZ monsters are absolutely huge, like 3,000-4,000 attack. Most of the time they won't be getting destroyed by battle, but when this card goes off, it's definitely pretty good. If you were going to play any of the trap cards, would be one of the better ones. It's definitely a half decent card. Next is the Tachyon, another Tachyon trap card. Basically, I'd say this is also like C tier. Basically, what this lets you do is you can target a Galaxy Dragon monster you control. Cannot be destroyed by battle, and it's unaffected by any card effects other than its own. If you control a Tachyon Dragon, you can activate this from your hand. So it's like decent protection. It's almost like that Blue Eyes card, the Ultimate Creature of Destruction. It's like a half decent card. it's just okay. It's a little frustrating. Again, it's a little too slow. You'd rather just play, the B or S tier cards, BAS tier cards. So, yeah, it's just an okay card. This card's really good. It's the Galaxy Eyes Counter Trap. It's one of the best counter traps ever printed. Say this is definitely somewhere in B tier. Again, this is depending on how you want to build a deck. But basically what it does is when you activate it, you have to control a Galaxy monster, but you can negate every single card that was activated in the chain before this card. And then if you have a Tachyon Dragon, you can actually activate this card from your hand, which is really, really broken. But yeah, basically every single card that was activated in the chain before this card was activated, all of those effects, all of your opponent's effects are all negated. And then on top of that, the cards are shuffled back into the deck. It's like a crazy, crazy effect. It's just the deck doesn't particularly use the counter traps quite that often. But it's definitely, as far as counter traps go, one of the best ever printed. Next is Photon Current. This is another trap card. It's probably like around D tier. Basically, when one of your light dragons gets targeted for an attack, you can have that monster gain attack equal to the attacking monster. So it's basically like Honest, but on a trap card, not from your hand, really slow. It's like a worst Honest, basically. Next is Eternal Galaxy. This is another kind of like D tier. I've never actually found the use for this card. Basically, you could target a Photon or Galaxy monster you control, and then XYZ monster that you control, and then summon from your extra deck a monster with 4 ranks higher than that monster. I've never found a use for this, ever. Never found a use for this card. I'm sure there is a use for this card. I have not found it. Maybe one day I will, and I will use it at that point. But until then, I think this is more of a D tier card. But that is everything. That is everything. Every single Galaxy Eyes or Galaxy card / Photon card. These are all repeat cards, so I'm not going to go over them twice. But yeah, this is everything. These are all of the best cards. And then these are all of the very questionable cards. But I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have any other suggestions for more videos, let me know, and enjoy your day. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy this type of content, check out the other videos on the channel, and please subscribe. It helps the channel a lot. Again, thank you so much. Have a terrific day.